So let's go back to like the very beginning, because when I watched your video and you talked about like not having a cycle for 54 days and like having these really long periods, like most of us that are used to just having regular cycles, it's like, oh, I have my period for 5 to 7 days and I'm going through the ovulation cycle. So what was that like for you to be going through that process before you even knew that there was something else going on?
Yeah, in the beginning, it's strange looking back on it now, that there should have been signs that I should have noticed at the time. But I think, you know, being on birth control, you can tend to just forget how a healthy body should function. So birth control was kind of masking a lot of it. Like, I remember I gained like a significant amount of weight, like 20 pounds from like 2015, like in the very beginning of 2015. And I thought that was, at the time I didn't think it was strange. I thought I was getting married, I was moving in, I thought that's just, it is what it is. And 20 pounds for me is a lot. I used to be very, very thin. And I was just like, okay, well, I'm just maturing. This is it. This is what's going on. And that is also a hallmark of PCOS and fast, unexplained weight gain. But, you know, we weren't trying to have a baby, so I was completely oblivious to all of that. And coming off birth control, like, you hear these stories and you see people, they usually just pop up pregnant like that, or they have kids back to back. And that's what kind of led me to share my story, because people only like to share stories like this once you have a baby. And I don't think that's as helpful as somebody who's actually going through it. Because I know those feelings stay with you, but, you know, you have other things to occupy your time, right? Like, you actually have a baby, you're on the other side of it now. So you can look back at the experience with a different lens than somebody who's going through it. So that's why I started sharing it. But I just knew, like, I don't think the first time I heard PCOS was my mom. Like, she's a nurse, and she was like, oh, I hope you don't have PCOS. And I was like, well, what's that? And I was like, no, it's fine. Maybe it's just my birth control. I've been on it 10 years. Like, maybe that's just it. So it was like being oblivious. And then you realize that you can't afford to be oblivious. And that was like the wake up call to me. And I don't think I woke up until I decided to switch doctors. And that was like a year later from when I initially was had those wonky periods.
That's fair. It's definitely one of those things that's like, you don't know about it until you're actually going through that process.
Nobody teaches women about it. People just tell you in high school, oh, you'll get pregnant. Just use birth control, use protection. So what happens when you can't? And people don't talk about that until you get an adult and you have to go through it.
You're so totally right, though. Like, that going through the process, like, what is it like for you to go through the process? Because even in watching your videos, like, it tugged at my heartstrings. It started making me ask questions like, what do I need to know and prepare myself as well? And just seeing your story has just been something so eye-opening. But you've also talked a lot about, like, transitioning. One of the things that I found to be interesting in your story was like this transition from optimism to like agony and heartbreak and disappointment. So can you talk about like how that has been a transition for you?
Yeah, so even before the miscarriage happened, like every month, right, especially going through infertility or fertility treatment. I like that word better, fertility treatment. Why don't they just call it that instead of infertility? But, you know, it is what it is. Yes. Yeah, every month. So a normal cycle you'd go through, say, and this is like on a time intercourse cycle or like ovulation medication that I was taking, or an IUI, which we did 2 of those that didn't work. So you start on, you get your period, that's when your month begins, and then you have to go in for monitoring on cycle day 3. So you're still on your period, but you need to go, you know, have a vaginal ultrasound to make sure you don't have a cyst from the prior month. Because sometimes these treatments can cause your ovaries to overproduce, and if you have a cycle, that month is completely canceled. You can't try that month. So, you know, you're sad when your period ends. Like, you would always go through these cycles, and I know my husband was always like, he didn't like to see me at the end of the month, like a cycle that didn't work, because I got so upset every single time. It's just like, it's a lot on your body, it's a lot on your mind, it's a lot of appointments, it's a lot of, oh, I can't go work out today because I have my trigger shot in the morning, and a trigger shot is when they give you a shot of this pregnancy hormone, which is ironic, like 10,000 micrograms of HCG so that your ovaries release eggs. So when you're on these ovulation induction medications, especially PCOS, you have a lot of small follicles that in your body. So you get this medication to make these follicles grow, so you'll have multiple follicles on either side of your ovary every month, and it just feels, it's a very full, intense feeling for that like last 2-3 days before you get the trigger shot. So you go through, you have that first appointment, so that's one. You come back in around cycle day 9 to make sure to do blood work to see if you have a surge and to check on your follicles. That's another ultrasound, that's another one. So then depending on how your follicles look, you come back a few days later, and then they take a look at them, and if they're getting mature, like a certain size, they'll say, okay, we're gonna take a trigger shot and release the follicles the next day. So you come back again the next day, you get your trigger shot, or you can use it at home. My last clinic, they always used to make me come in, which is really annoying, but you come in again. So that's like 5 appointments then, and if you're doing an IUI, you do a trigger, 36 hours after that, you have to come back in for your IUI. And your husband has to, you know, drop his sample off, you have to, same thing, vaginal ultrasound, all that stuff. So it's a lot, and during the month, I would get very low at the end of the month, like when it didn't work, and you know, like, you become like a pee on a stick addict, that's what they call it. Like you just keep checking and checking and checking to see if you're pregnant or not, or if it worked. But it kind of evolves. So the beginning cycles when you don't do trigger shots, you like test all the time and you get really anxious and really let down. So it's like really high and really low. And then when we started doing IUI or started adding the triggers in, the trigger will stay in your system for 10 days. So you have it's called the 2-week wait. So there's 14 days from when you have the IUI or your procedure and when you ovulate to when your period starts in a normal cycle anyway. So then during that whole time, the 2-week wait, you're like, should I do this? Should I have this wine? Should I do that? Should I stay home? Should I do this? Should I get my nails done? And it's a lot. It's a lot of self-doubt. And then you're like, okay, well, this cycle didn't work again. And then you have to start it all over again. So you have like a very short time to grieve, like the process not working before you move on to a next step. And through like therapy, you learn to, or you need to learn how to grieve each step as you go through the process. Like you grieve getting pregnant the natural way, and then you grieve like adding more treatments. Like you get upset that you can't, we have to do even more than we had to last time. So it's just a vicious cycle. It keeps you in that every month. And like as far as like social goes, like I didn't want to be out. Like sometimes I can be pretty social when I feel like being social. So I'm like an extrovert introvert. So I like to go out on my terms, but through this whole process, and especially after the miscarriage, I've been very protective of myself. Like I keep a tight controller on my environment because I will lose it like at all times now. But when you're going through the cycle every single month, you can't really do that. So it's like, you know, you'll start skipping things like baby showers. And you know, some people might not, might take offense to that, but honestly, it's just so triggering. Like, and you might know your friend's story, you might not. They might have had trouble, or they might not have had trouble, but just being there. And I remember a specific time, like I started seeing a therapist in August, and I have a new one now. She's amazing. I switched in the last month after the miscarriage happened. But she, my first therapist would always tell me like, baby shower's always a bad idea, always a bad idea. So then I was like, oh, these are my friends, I should be fine. So I remember specifically in September last year, I went to this baby shower, and you know, I knew what the friend had been through to have this baby, but being there around other people who were just constantly speaking about, everybody was either pregnant or had already had kids at the table I was sitting at. So the conversation was just like, you feel like an outsider. And I think that's a really good thing for infertility. You feel like an outsider all the time. Like you, in those social situations, you feel like an outsider there, you feel like an outsider when people ask you if you have family and you really want to tell them what's really going on, but people aren't ready for that kind of honesty sometimes. But yeah, you just have to learn to be protective of yourself. And I think this miscarriage and everything with the molar pregnancy has kind of like jump shot me into the self-care land.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Be selfish. Yeah.
Yes. Because I think that what you're talking about, though, like, we feel so much pressure to be there for our friends, even to the point where it's hurting us. So when you talk about, like, not going to a baby shower, and it would make so much sense to not be there given what you're going through. Like, a lot of times people are still like, but no, those are my friends. And it's like, but you're not be sitting in the corner crying the whole time.
Right.
Like, how does that
Or you cry in the car after, because that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
Like, I didn't even think I was that upset, but I remember going to the bathroom for an extended period of time. My husband texted me like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, you know, I was fine. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, we ate, we've seen everybody, let's go. And I sobbed on the way back home. Like, I was like, I didn't even realize that this was going to happen. Like, I thought I would be okay. And ever since then, I haven't been to another baby shower. I think I've been to one, actually. I know one of my good, like, best friends, she had a very tough time trying to conceive her daughter, who was born in December. But her baby shower was, I think, October. On the day, we had the terrible experience with the clinic that made me switch. So I'm not going to get into it. I think I talked about it on my channel. Yeah. But we had waited for like 3 hours at this office that morning. We had a baby shower we had a baby shower that same day, and I wasn't going to miss it because all of my good friends were in town. So I just kind of went, and I was like, okay, but then that's a friend that understands. Yeah. Like, that's not a friend who's going to be like, well, they didn't come to our baby shower. And listen, even if I don't go, I always send a gift. I usually always pick it out. But now I really can't look at that stuff, so Doug picks it out. So if your baby shower gift is a little strange, my husband picked it out because I can't even do it right now. But yeah, it's just things that affect you in ways that you've never thought before, and especially after this miscarriage. Like, even like my closest friends, we all have a group me that we all talk in all day long. I had to leave that group me because I cannot be triggered by, oh, look, so-and-so is pregnant, or, oh, like a friend is pregnant and maybe just like, you know, I don't want to say complaining, but complaining about the pregnancy or something like that. And I literally can't. Like, I had muted it for a long time when we were kind of like in limbo, like, is this gonna work, is it gonna work out? And they didn't know either. I didn't tell anybody because I was just kind of, I don't know if it's like an intuition. I was like, I don't want to tell anybody. And I know, like, my husband ended up telling some of his friends, and I was like, oh my god, then that freaked me out. I was like, no, I don't want to tell anybody. Like, I can't. Like, I really can't. So I've been out of that for like 2 weeks, and I think it's been helpful because I just need to be in my head. Like, I really can't process anybody else's issues right now. Until I mean, it's gonna be a long process to process everything, but until I'm in a better place, like, I can't hear the noise. And that's kind of shifted the conversation back to having conversations on my terms. Like, in a group message, you know, conversations go from this to this to this to this all the time. So, you know, I don't want to be policing the conversation like, hey, y'all, let's not talk about this, because, you know, everybody's in their different stage of their lives, and it might even be people don't even realize. And that's one thing. I try to share it like on my Instagram stories usually. Like, people don't even realize how triggering what you're talking about can be to somebody going through a miscarriage especially. But because, you know, even dealing with infertility, I can handle it, but now it's like,
it's a whole different
level. It's a whole different level. Like, I can't be sitting in a meeting and then happen to look in the group chat and we're talking about how somebody else is pregnant and how everybody's having babies. Like, I can't do it. So if you text me, we'll have conversations about anything else, but I just can't do it at the moment. Yeah.